This conference will now be recorded.
Here, it's a good thing. Representing 9 towns, our district is it's different in every town. This is good. And of course, I stay in touch with Superintendent Cameron. And at this point, I believe what is best is to give preliminarily, sorry about the word, where we're at. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is we'll be voting in about a week and a half at the school committee meeting on the final FY26 budget. And then from there, we'll have a March meeting like we historically do. And we'll invite all 9 towns, which includes everybody here that would like to attend from the finance and select board meeting and town manager, of course. And we'll have a firm number at that point. We recently, similar to Belchertown Schools, got the Chapter 70 numbers in the governor's budget on January 22nd. So we're able to start really honing in on what everything looks like, as well as predicting what regional transportation, which for us is a big deal, reimbursement rate may be. The Belchertown enrollment, so everyone's aware, has been steadily increasing. We saw just a small change in that this year of about 5 students, and we sit at 110 currently at Pathfinder Tech. That's as of the October 124 number. And of course, the number of students does have a correlation, of course, to the cost to educate them. Also, if you compare that number, if everyone recalls from the last few years, me describing this, to about 4 years ago, about 4 October 1s ago, that number was about 34% lower. So we've seen about a 34% gain in Belchertown students, grades 9 through 12, from 4 years ago to now. And I think a lot of it is, a lot of students and a lot of families are looking for a career tech education. And fortunately, the taxpayers have an option. School districts, both are excellent. I'm a huge advocate of the Belchertown schools. I think they do a remarkable job. I always do. But if the right choice for a family and a child is to go to our school, the nice thing is they have 2 options because of both school districts being available. Our focus right now through all of our subcommittee meetings and where we are is to try to get as close as we can, and perhaps even a little more favorable than the minimum increase for the foundation number, the minimum increase of spending required. And that number this year is just over $26,000 for Belchertown, $26,000. So we're doing everything possible to make an entire budget work, and specifically for Belchertown to keep that minimum number. That's where we're focusing on right now. The budget will be voted on, as I mentioned, by the school committee in the middle of February, but I just wanted everyone to be aware tonight, especially after talking to the town manager, we are, of course, staying tuned into everything in this town, and we're aware of challenges, and there's only so much to go around. And I'm letting you know, as a superintendent of the district with those 9 towns, we're doing everything we can to be fiscally conservative, as we always are. And looking at the Belchertown numbers right now, it looks like we should be able to stay within the range of the minimum increase of 26,000 assessment this year. Yeah, so I thought that would be a positive thing for everybody here, especially with some of the other issues that are causing financial stress. I say that, and I also want to mention that the taxpayers of Belchertown were extremely supportive last year in moving forward with our request of the overall budget and their portion of the assessment, and we passed on the meeting floor. We received unanimous last year from all 9 towns, which we also greatly appreciated. With that said, part of the reason we're able to try to hone that in a little bit this year is because of the excess and deficiency availability. So regional school districts are allowed to, based on our revenue come from the previous year, we can have up to 5% excess and deficiency and put that towards, if we have it, towards the following fiscal year's budget. So a lot of what we're working with this year is using some of that to try to offset what the costs are to the 9 towns. And that's something that we were working towards many months ago, and we are still working towards, and that's what you should see. So what I can say right now, again, is we're looking at trying to stay within the minimum contribution requirement increase of 26,000. We're doing our very best at that. And after February 12th, and for sure by March 12th, I'll have a firm number for the town. But there is also a possibility we'll be able to sharpen the pencil even more and make that even a little more attractive. So we're working on it. And I want everyone to be aware of that.
It's wonderful news. Does anyone on the Finance Committee have any questions or comments for Mr. Duda?
Do any of your students pay fees for extracurriculars to participate in those?
The short answer is no. And the longer answer, which is important, is that we are currently ranked at 46.82%, just the most recent ranking of economically disadvantaged students. So about half, every other child at the Pathfinder Regional School District is at a level of low income and poverty. And with that being said, I personally and my school committee has always advocated to not omit children from participating because they can't afford it. And I strongly believe in that as well. So the short answer is no. The long answer is I believe we need to do everything possible always to try to find other ways to make it so if someone wants to participate in something, they can.
Well, your night school budget, that doesn't come out of our budget, right? Just to clarify.
That's a good question. In previous years, we were requesting some funds, which night school money is kind of a standalone, sort of like a capital expenditure. It's based on the K to 12 population of each of the 9 towns, and then a portion is paid. Short answer, no. We are not requesting any funds from night school. It's going to be completely self-sustaining in FY26, and it will be completely self-sustaining in FY27. I can guarantee those 2 years, and I am hoping it's built up and grows beyond. We worked really diligently to acquire grants. One of them was in excess of $400,000 this past fiscal year, which is a 2-year grant for workforce training in the evening. The prior 2 years, we received a grant that was around $280,000 for workforce training. And we coupled that with a small assistance we received from some of the towns a few years ago. And now we have a full-time coordinator, and we're paying it all with grant money and revenue we're making. So we are not asking the towns for anything outside of the operational budget. Additionally, we have no capital this year, large capital expenditures, so you won't see any of that either. So when I speak to the assessment number, that is it. And that we're going to be looking at with the town of Belchertown. You won't be hearing about night school extra costs, and because we're, again, self-sustaining, and you won't be hearing about capital. And while I'm on that topic, I'm going to remind everybody here, because I'm very proud of it. We have a 52-year-old facility, and you are all welcome, anybody here, because it's your school, to come and visit and see how beautifully maintained that building is. And I think it's a true testament to the quality of students that are caring for it. And I think it's the ultimate example of caring for and taking care of a taxpayer investment. And I can't take all the credit for that. I've been at the school district for 18 years. I'm also a graduate from the late 90s out of there, so I have a lot of belief and heart in what I say. I know, John, you're a graduate as well. But the bottom line is we really care for the place, and we would love a new building. We would love a lot of things, but at this time, we're not asking for that.
Would you just comment on some of the stuff you provide to the town recently? Just so the town, there's a lot of people here, so just kind of talk about like the fire station.
Had a couple of things we're doing for the town of Belchertown is we're in the second year now of the fire department upgrade, which is really a massive project. So we're putting in bunkhouses above. That was, I think the number was $1.5 or $1.7 million, the original quote. The fire chief's giving me a little bit of a head nod there, so I think that number is pretty close. We were able to provide electrical work there with students, carpentry work with students, and plumbing work with students. So a huge savings for the town, easily upwards of $1 million. We also installed recently at the backstop, the little Fenway green monster. The students built that, and that was really a great project. Some of the students that worked on both of the projects I just described are Belchertown students, which is great, mixed in with, of course, 8 other towns as well. We're always available to help the towns and Belchertown whenever needed, whenever we can. There's some projects we can take on and some we can't. But if we're able to help, we put municipalities on top of the pile. And if we can help with our students, and I know Steve Williams has spoke to me before about different possible projects, and we're all ears. If there's something we can help with and it's quality work, good learning experience for our students, we're here to help. It's part of the community partnership.
Thank you.
Anything to add from the select board?
It was great news to start a meeting out with, Mr. Duda.
Yeah, well,
That was. Thank you for coming. We
you're welcome.
appreciate
I'm
your
glad
time.
there's a
I have a
little
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
positive news.
Sorry.
Can you just explain what the 5% excess of deficiency is that you described?
Yeah, so regional school districts, so we don't have a stabilization account. There's, capital stabilization accounts in towns and educational stabilization accounts. We don't have one of those. We could, but we don't. So regional school districts are allowed to have a carry forward of up to 5%. It's called an excess and deficiency account, very similar to a stabilization, but that money can't exceed that threshold and it would be a surplus. So if we were, so to tell you exactly how it operates with us, so last year we were looking at this year in advance saying, well, are we going to be able to say we have, can we tighten things up to the point where we would have a surplus, some money, and that could be carried forward to offset the assessments this year? And that's ultimately what we did. So we're looking at offsetting, again, my committee hasn't voted, so I don't want to hone in on the number, but it's several $100,000 that we're putting towards offsetting all the assessments this year with that money.
And is that 5% of your overall budget?
Of the operational budget. It excludes a couple of things like regional transportation, but yes.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the school committee? Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay if you would like, or we're going to have public comment section next, facilitated by Heidi. Or you're welcome to leave. if you'd like.
Stay on the sidelines for a bit. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
With the gracious support of the chairs from the other committees, the school committee regularly has public comment. There's folks in this room who may or may not know how that works. So people signed up for public comment in advance. We limit speakers to 3 minutes each, and we're limiting ourselves to 10 speakers. There are 5 people that have signed up online or in person to speak. And so I'll call them in the order that they signed up. You have 3 minutes. The policy is there if you're not familiar with it. There are some things that you can't speak about. So like a personnel issue for somebody else would be something that I would have to stop comment for. But Peter V.G. Weller is first. And if you can say your name and your address.
Sure. Peter Weller, Springfield Road, Belchertown. Good evening. I stand before you tonight not only as a father of 2 daughters in our elementary schools, but as an educator who understands firsthand the value of strong public schools. Like many families, my wife and I chose to live in Belchertown because of the reputation of its schools. Quality schools are the bedrock of any thriving community. Without them, we jeopardize not only our children's education, but the very future of our town. Last year's $1.2 million in cuts took a heavy toll, eliminating 17 positions, increasing class sizes, and reducing elective offerings. The proposed $2.1 million in cuts this year would be catastrophic. We simply cannot afford to lose more teachers, programs, or resources. Our students deserve better. Our teachers are already stretched thin, doing more with less. They routinely work beyond contracted hours, grading, planning, and providing extra support without compensation. Some even come to school on the weekend to ensure their classrooms are ready for our children to receive the high-quality education they're accustomed to. This extraordinary level of dedication should be acknowledged, commended, and rewarded. Furthermore, Belchertown's teachers are underpaid compared to neighboring districts. As educators ourselves, my wife and I would both face pay cuts if we were to work in town. That is unacceptable. In order to maintain our excellent group of educators and attract the next generation of great teachers to the Belchertown Public Schools, we must offer competitive salaries and benefits. This is non-negotiable. It's time for Belchertown to make a genuine commitment to its schools. We must reject further cuts to education. Our elected officials and residents must actively lobby for our governor and representatives for increased state aid. And if despite our best efforts, cuts are unavoidable, then the burden must be shared equitably across other departments. Our schools and students have already paid the price. It is time for us to demonstrate that we value our educators' hard work, not just with words, but with the necessary resources to allow them to do their jobs. A high-quality education in a supportive environment is the promise we've made to our children. It is a promise we must honor now more than ever. Thank you.
So if you can now hear from Melanie Donovan.
Melanie Donovan, Belchertown. Good evening, folks. I see a lot of people who have some very strong feelings about these matters. Thank you all for being here. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a Belchertown resident for 10 years, a Belchertown High School intensive needs para for one, and I'm the parent of a 4th grader and a 7th grader. I'm also a Girl Scout troop leader. I coach Girls on the Run here in town, and I'm a member of the Belchertown Cultural Council. My point is, when I moved here, I was all in. I love living here. We have fun community events. We have beautiful outdoor spaces. We have a phenomenal library. But the number one reason my family chose to move to Belchertown was because of the schools. And we've never regretted that. I'm not sure I'll be able to keep saying that. Yes, enrollment is down. It pointed out that new construction in town is also down. But if we don't entice new folks to move here as our aging population leaves us, and it's not replaced, our main source of revenue will also go down. We have an opportunity with a potential new nearby train stop for new folks to move here. But will young families pick Belchertown when they compare our district to Ludlow, Amherst, Hadley? They're investing in their schools. I have a list here of almost a dozen schools that, sorry folks. I know that 16,000 per student sounds like a lot, but I have a list here of almost a dozen districts in our area, and we are second to last. I ask you to take a second to consider the needs of our students. Yes, enrollment is down, but what has gone up is the number of students with IEPs, 427. 22% of our students have disabilities. 37% of our students are considered high needs. These services cost money. Here's a few more numbers. 91%, that's our graduation rate. 76% go on to college. Our students are smart, driven, and successful. Will they continue to be when we cut AP courses or squeeze 25 to 30 kids in a class? Balancing the budget is hard. I don't envy you folks sitting here. But don't sacrifice the long-term health of our community for short-term savings. I would rather see a tax increase than these proposed cuts. Investing in education benefits all citizens. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Moselle. I am a teacher at CHCS. I am a music teacher at CHCS, Chestnut Hill. And some of this is going to sound a little bit self-serving, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Preface it by saying that I am as concerned about my colleagues as I am for my own job. We're looking at cuts of 27 people, and I personally don't understand how we'd even function with that. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. But I wanted to speak to some other issues that I've been hearing. I've always seen this town pre-existing as an arts community. I just want to say that at the onset. And I've been hearing a lot of rebranding stuff where we're trying to remake Belchertown some kind of arts community. We're already an arts community. And once again, this is self-serving, but this is the best band program in Western Mass. And if we're going to make cuts, the arts are always the first ones that get cut. And I would be devastated. And I'll just tell you where I'm coming from. When I stepped into this job 15 years ago, it was a file cabinet with 2 big shelves in it. And in those shelves, it's filled with paperwork front to back. And I read every page of it because my predecessor was someone who I really admire. His name's Dave Jacobson. And he was one of the best music teachers that I've ever met in my life. And I learned from him for 2 or 3 years before I even got the job. And I just hope that other people look at this way, that we have this beautiful, fragile thing when it comes to a music program, an arts program in a town like this. It's anomalous. It is not something that happens everywhere, and it's an incredibly fragile thing. So if we lose some teachers here and there, it's just a slow decline. And I'm really worried about that because this program is everything to me personally. I don't have kids. The kids that I teach every day are my kids. And I can't imagine trying to find another town like this. You're not going to find one. This is an amazing arts program. It's an amazing arts town. And I just hope you understand that it's a really fragile thing and we need to protect it. And not just for my job, but because there's so many kids that it benefits. I mean, I'm just going to brag for a second. My best student is at Eastman right now. And I have many more that are on their way to good music schools, to be music teachers, to be performers. And that's all I have to say. I just wanted to speak to the music program, to the arts program, and to try to protect that in this town because it means everything.
Thank you. Yes,
Good evening, Maria Scudere, Belchertown. I've been a resident of Belchertown for over 32 years, hard to believe, and a town employee for at least 28 of those years. And while this is my first time speaking at a public meeting, I consider myself an informed, regularly voting member of our community. I've watched the town board struggle with budgeting issues for at least the past decade. Not because of mismanagement, not because of lack of effort, but simply because expenses have outpaced revenues. Each year, we put off projects, we cut programs, shift some costs to employees, and even with these efforts, we find ourselves here with a budget that has no fat, only muscle. There are no new immediate revenue sources on the horizon, but there's still immediate need. The question is, how deep into the muscle of this town are we willing to cut? How many years can we continue on this path without changing the very essence of this community that we love? When will the board be honest enough to discuss the need for an override to save our town? There is no one coming to save us. It is time to recognize that as a community, we can only save ourselves.
And our last speaker is Jessica Lefseisen.
Hello, my name is Jessica Letzeisen. I have been a member of the Belchertown community for 36 years right now, even though I'm only 40. I'm 40. Get that on the document. I have been working at Belchertown High School for the last 16 years as an employee, and I've been a town employee before that if we're counting summer camps and babysitting. So I came up to say a couple of things. Number one, and I'm sorry I didn't have a nice list prepared like I always tell my students to do. The school is the town's largest business. Any way that we look at it, we are the largest business. I specifically came back to Belchertown with my family to raise my children here. In the last 16 years, my family has made great sacrifices to make sure that the town of Belchertown is the town of Belchertown that I got to experience as a child. My entire family has donated our time through my advising of every single thing possible at the high school. It has spent its time coaching teams, whether it's basketball, soccer, little league, through the rec department, through private entities, through Boy Scouts, through church groups, through community preschools. We have been a part of everything. When I look at this town and look at the business that this town has created, we are starting to fall short. This used to be a thriving business, and now it looks as though we are starting to fail. If you look at the jobs that we are offering in Belchertown that are being offered in the school program, many of them go unfilled. I have been in Belchertown High School for 16 years, and there is a possibility that my job could be eliminated because of the budget cuts that are being proposed. That's a possibility that I'm okay with. I'm not okay with it for my children. I have 3 children in the district. If you take away those positions, as of right now, my children have gym once a week. You wouldn't think that was a big deal. For an 8-year-old boy, that's a big deal. When there's no outdoor recess, that's a huge deal. My curtains in my house will never be the same. We have there is no job security. I talked to other people that I have friends that are teachers. I'm like, come work in Belchertown. It's awesome. It's a great community. And they're like, yeah, if I want to get fired next year, there's no way I'm coming. So we are not getting applicants strictly because of the message that we are sending out that this is not our top priority. We have not looked at the long term. The students that we are seeing now are students who were reading for comprehension in 4th and 5th grade, that the school was shut down because of COVID. And now we have such tremendous gaps because technically they're learning gaps caused by trauma because the schools were not open. Those students did not have teachers in front of them. And now we are paying that price in school. A lot of people say, let's go back to the past. We fit 27, 30 kids in a class. Yes, I was there for that. I was much younger then. It was still a lot. And now looking at it, we also did different things during that time period that are illegal now. We cannot track students and make sure those who have specific learning needs are all together. So those students who need small group classes would be thrown into these classes of 27 students, which is against the law. You cannot do that. The state will not allow it. So before you start making cuts, you really need to start looking into how that is going to affect your group dynamics. We are losing to students to other schools. Parents are opting. Oh, come on. Parents are opting to homeschool and all those things. Man, I know I talk too much. Things to look at. I'm going to keep going because I'm going to go quick. The school, if we're looking, people are going into other schools. If you talk to parents, PTO, we're donating copy paper. We're donating all of the classroom supplies. There is minimal places to cut any longer. As Maria has said, 2.5 override. There are ways to do that creatively so it does not affect our families that are on fixed income, the older citizens of the town. There are ways to go about that and grandfathering in certain demographics that would still help them. And that's all I have to say.
Lori and Ed, thank you so much for allowing that. That's a typical thing for our meeting, and we appreciate voices being heard.
So thank you very much for everyone who's come to observe, to learn, to participate and engage in the process. I think that's amazing. Thank you, Heidi, for facilitating that, and thank you to all the speakers that stood up and expressed yourself. It is really appreciated. We are.
Oh, you gotta use that loud voice. These
Can you not?
microphones
Okay.
are not amplified.
I thought I had a microphone, but anyway, so thank you everybody for coming. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for being engaged in our process and learning about it and observing and being here. We really do appreciate that. Thank you for the speakers that came to the microphone and express yourself. Thank you, Heidi, for facilitating that. And now we are going to move it to Mr. Steve Williams, who's going to update us on the FY26 governor's budget.
Okay, I'm going to defer the update to our town accountant. She prepared some information for you tonight, but I did want to thank everybody for being here and expressing your thoughts on the budget process. At the last meeting on January 9th, we outlined the budget scenarios that we had in front of us, but we were holding off until the governor's budget was released and Chapter 70 was also announced, and that has happened. So the budget information that we had on January 9th has been updated for tonight. For those of you that came in from my left, there was handouts with these slides. If you came in from the right side, you might not have picked them up, but they're still there. You can take some when you leave so that you have the information that we're having up on the screen behind me. So, ready?
Sure. So we're going to start with the governor's budget. We have received the governor's budget. It's a preliminary estimate. The House and the Senate still have to do their gyrations, working the numbers, and that's going to take a while. The House is usually done in April. The Senate finishes more like the end of May, and we get our real numbers, our real estimates, probably June 30th if we're lucky. So we have to, weigh our options as far as which numbers we're going to use. But one story short on that, the net increase that will be available for Belchertown out of state aid is $258,000. It's better than last year's 27,000, or it was very, very low last year. So 258 sounds really good to me right now. That includes all of the receipts, takes out offsets, which are school choice and library grants, and takes out the assessments for school choice, charter schools, PVTA, and a few little bits and pieces. So we are in $258,000 better shape than our last meeting. The income and expense is, okay, we'll go over this. I just wanted to make sure. So our revenue, just so that people understand, it's quite a moving puzzle. Our income is local receipts, property tax, state receipts, free cash, and receipts reserved. The free cash is really the result of operations from the previous fiscal year. So it's not revenue per se, but it's an available source. Local receipts are pretty flatlined. The property tax levy we're estimating 250,000 for new growth. I believe that's the number, and the proposition 2.5. So the number here is what that comes to. All of these numbers are fluid. It's early in the process, believe it or not. State receipts, what you see there is the governor's budget. That's the gross receipts. Free cash available is $1,743,000. Receipts reserved is things like we get grants for BCTV and ambulance receipts. Ambulance receipts are reserved and voted toward fire rescue each year. So that helps us there. Against that is mandatory and other charges. Cherry sheet offsets and assessments, as I mentioned, it's school choice and library grants are the offsets. The assessments, again, are charter school, school choice. Those are taken off the top, and PVTA and other things. It's not just school. Those are taken off the top before we receive our funds.
Just so everybody knows, the new growth number was estimated at $225,000. And what that is, that's our tax rate times the anticipated value of the new homes that are going to be built this year, or new businesses, any new building construction. And the 2.5% growth on our levy limit is $865,784. So that's the part of the available funding. When Jill's reviewing this slide, on your right-hand side, there's some line numbers. Those line numbers reference the income and expense sheet that starts on page 5 or 6 in this packet. It's a much longer explanation of what Jill's giving you tonight, but that's what those refer to. So you can always go back and forth, and it'll make a little bit more sense that way.
So available for allocatable expense, and that's the first page of the income and expense. It's the middle subtotal is $57,292,723, and I neglected to talk about the rest of the mandatory and other charges. We have money set aside for out of free cash for capital and one-time expenses that went into the mandatory charges. That was a vote by the 3 boards were together, and the select board, I believe, was the voting board to set that up. The finance committee was also,
We voted in favor.
yeah.
5-0.
I think everybody, everyone kind
The
of,
school committee voted.
everyone
5-0.
everyone agreed.
Yep.
The vote thing isn't me. So allocatable expenses to be funded prior to departmental distribution, free cash reserve to go into reserves, 226,645 towards the bottom of this page. Fixed costs, 8,147,383, pensions, insurances, and debt and interest. Those are the three big things. We have the Pathfinder assessment, which we have a better idea of. We didn't know really anything. So that's why we have it as level funding at this moment. So to go to the next slide.
So before you do, can I ask you a
Sure,
question?
absolutely.
Where it says free cash available,
Mhm.
last year was 15 and this year is 17. Is that accounting for that policy we did of 80%, 60%? Or is that the total amount of free cash available? Because I see you've allocated it elsewhere later on.
Okay, hang on.
So yeah,
It's the total amount.
the fourth line down, okay, so that's the total amount.
I have so many pages.
That's okay.
It's the total.
And the,
Yeah.
And then all those different income parts you have, what does chapter 70 come under? Where is that?
Chapter 70, it comes under state aid. That's where the chapter 70 comes in. That's where
So is that where it
unrestricted-
says cherry sheet on here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Well, state receipts, if you look at the top of that top section, state receipts with cherry sheet as in quotations.
Okay, so that's chapter
That's
70.
where chapter 70 lies.
Okay.
Can you just clarify that some of the free cash is not, it was money allotted to us for like the drug program? Just so that's not a true number. So
That was the previous,
so that's why it's a little different. So we had like 150,000 we got back
In-
from the state that had to go back into an account, right?
that was last fiscal year.
in the 17, 1.7.
It is not in the 1.7 that we're talking about now. That's why we have a 1.5 number for the previous year, because we had to vote that 154,000 into the opioid settlement.
Right.
Thank you.
That flowed into free cash to begin with. We received the money, it flowed into free cash, and we were able to mandated actually to vote it into a separate account for the purposes that it is, yes, set up for.
So really also in a nutshell, so the 931,052 that we're going to gain from the state receipts, that much of it is mandated costs. So that's where we're getting our 258,000 increase down below. Like we're not getting 931,000.
Correct. So when you look at the state receipts up in the top section, 18,828,809.
Mhm.
Cherry sheet offsets and assessments, I put them in one chunk, but the offsets are somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million for, actually, I'll tell you what it is. $1,326,460 goes directly to the schools for school choice incoming students. $46,908 goes directly to the library for their use. So
that's
those
mandated.
those are offsetted
Right.
sets, and the state requires that we do what we do with them. As for the estimated charges or assessments, it's 1.924. $1,732,000 is school choice plus charter. And those are charges that get taken off the top of our revenue. Does that make sense to you guys? I don't know if I'm talking in circles or not. 168,000 is regional transportation, which is PVTA. And then we have little things like RMV non-renewal surcharge, yada, yada, yada. Just little piddly things.
So the crux of it is that even though we've ultimately had a $931,052 increase, of that, The only thing that we can allocate outside of what has been a fixed cost
Correct.
is the 258,000 and change that Steve had previously stated. That's the money that's going to be then allocated in the 70-30 split.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you want to do the math, then when you see state receipts, the variance is 931,000. And when you look at cherry sheet offsets and assessments, those are taken off the table as available sources, 655,000. Hopefully that makes it a tad clearer.
Those are our two main numbers from what we get from this. Like, we get this, they take this, and that's what's left, 258.
Where's the 258 you're referring to?
It is the additional revenue from the cherry sheet in the top section, which is 900.
I guess I'm just asking, is it anywhere on this stuff?
No.
Like,
Oh.
it's not calculated.
It's not.
Is it in this one?
I don't know.
Okay.
No. Sorry. The income and expense is set up in such a way that those numbers are not necessarily together because offsets and assessments are mandatory charges and need to be tracked separately so that we know really what we're doing, that we're not getting $18 million, but that's the starting point.
And that will generally be where we'll end up, even though these are somewhat preliminary numbers that are live and flowing. We're not going to see any great ebbs or flows. It would be
normally we're somewhere in the ballpark with the governor budget.
10%.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And it could go
Unless
down.
there's a huge state windfall that they decide to share.
And if there's
I
not,
don't-
take away.
Yeah, it can go either way. So the $258,000, as you can imagine, doesn't cover a lot of increased costs.
So what's going on with this conversation is the governor's budget's the first step. The representatives are going to pass a version of a budget. Our senators are going to pass a version of the budget. And at some point, they'll form a committee to reconcile the two, and the final budget will be passed and presented back to the governor. At that point, the governor will have the choice to either reject it or sign it. So there's still a little bit of a process here, but in the past, the final budget is usually very close to what the governor has proposed. So that's why we use the governor's budget for our planning purposes. This year's going to be a little bit interesting because there are so many changes at the federal level that could potentially impact the local level through the states. So we need to really pay attention to this.
But is it correct that currently where we stand with new revenue coming in that we can allocate, it's a total of 961,052, 670, 736 would go to the school at the 70%, and 288,316 would go to the town at 30%.
Do you want to go to the next page, Kate?
Are you?
I think she's jumping ahead.
Jumping ahead.
Oh,
I jumped. Like we
Thank
all
you.
kind of, right?
mhm.
You have to.
Do you want me to go?
Go ahead. Go
Or
ahead.
do you,
Go ahead,
or
go
do you
ahead,
want
go
to
ahead,
do it?
go ahead.
Okay. So our additional available resources are $1,479,299. So that is all of the revenues that are higher than last year, the increase over last year, less the mandatory charges, which if they're more, they get subtracted. So our net is $1,479,300. Our is what we have to work with for all of the departments of the town. And that includes the schools. We are all of toward over and above their last year's budget. The other town departments would get $288,316 over their previous year budget. If you're looking at the income and expense, you see that the income and expenses is page 6 and 7. On page 7, it's maybe a little bit clearer on page 7, the schools, the fixed, and the town government departments. It just kind of gives you a little bit of a clearer picture.
My quick question, the 518,247 increase in fixed costs, and that's a zero for increase in Pathfinder, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that 26,000 will be, or whatever it turns out to be, will be additionally needed. Yeah. Which brings us to the FY25 budgets. Sorry, I'm trying to get to where I am here. The FY25 budget with plus the available increase, which is, this is the bottom of this.
You want to go back to page 3?
Back page 3. It's hard to concentrate. The FY25 school budget is 185, 396. The 672, 736 from above would go to add to that to get 858, 132. The town government departments were 182, 658 plus 288, 316 would be 470, 974. And you can see the required cuts from what the preliminary requests were. What else are we doing?
This is just for reference.
Okay.
So you want me to
Does anybody have questions? Because I'm happy to answer questions. You can, or if you wanted to, you could email me if you feel like you need clarification, really want clarification on something. Do you? What?
We're not going to have public comment.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody from here have questions?
I don't think yet, but keep going.
Actually, that's for our town accountant. That's the end of the presentation from her side of things. I just want to say thank you. This really underscores how hard you work every day. I know it's a lot of work to put all these numbers together, especially when they're fluid and moving. So I do appreciate that. The next few slides are for reference.
And Steve, can I just say one thing? I'm sorry. So I just also want to note that on these handouts and on what's up on the screen, so the target allocations, that is the actual monies that we believe we will have. While both the town and the school would prefer to have much more funding in order they would like to do, the actual monies that we will have is the $33,058,132 for the schools, $13,470,974 for the town. So those can change a little bit either way, but that's generally what we're going to be working with from this point forward.
So the next few slides are just for reference. There's the school budget historical data. There's the other government department budget data for the last 10 years. The full income and expense sheet is here for your reference. And then there's some charts that we took out of the fiscal year 25, which is what we're currently in. Finance committee report, just to kind of show you how the town budget is allocated and where our revenues come from. The FY26 charts won't be available until town meeting in May. So we just wanted you to have a feel for what's been going on.
Can I just clarify on the public schools, just because I've been getting a lot of questions? That 34 million, 14 million of that is chapter 70. Right.
Right, it's total spending.
Correct.
Right. It's total.
It doesn't say that, so a lot of people have been emailing me saying on the website, it says 34 million to the schools.
I've gotten,
14 million of that is chapter 70.
I've gotten lots of comments that 60
Correct.
cents of every tax dollar is part of this, and we just want to clarify that.
14 million is chapter 70.
No, I understand what
understand.
you're saying. I'm not sure. When I'm the accountant, so I think in different terms, that pot is how much we have. We certainly give you more than the 14 million. We give the school department more than net school spending.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's why I have this confused look on my face.
Because 14 million comes from the state.
Right.
Right.
So that's your total
Which is
spending.
part of that
Yep.
cherry sheet number
Yes,
that we
I
talked
understand.
about.
I understand. I'm just
Okay.
clarifying
Perfect.
that 14 million of that comes from the state. You have given us above net school spending. I will not complain about that. But over time, it's reducing.
Is it reducing the net school spending over? Isn't it about 20% per year that we go above and beyond net school? I think so. Do you have those stats, Steve?
They're in the packet, I
They're in the packet. I think it's about 20% last year that we were above net school. I could be wrong. Sometimes I am.
It was 20.
It was 20 and 19.2. So it's been consistently, 3 years ago it was 20.5, 16.6, 17.4, 19.2. So it's consistently, it fluctuates somewhat, but generally it's a significant amount above what the state mandate.
Well, just to comment on somebody that, and I was going to wait, but I think this is the perfect time, just to comment on somebody said, the Belchertown spending per pupil is $17,464. Out of 310 public and vocational schools, we're ranked number 282. That means 91% of Massachusetts districts spend more on their students. So I know that you're saying that it's been about 20%, but if you look on the data about the Department of Ed, and it's not surrounding towns.
I understand.
Palmer, Ware are all spending more money.
I do.
So I only share that because one, it was brought up, and you had mentioned about the 20% over, which has been great. I don't know if you want me to stop or continue.
You can continue to say whatever you'd like to say. This is like, we,
Right.
like everyone.
And this is not towards anybody, but it's just to the
Right.
story of the budget. We've been talking about revenue, and it is what it is, but I just want to be clear, there's a number of people here, that just as I've been superintendent for 5 years, I've cut $4,700,000 from the leveled service budget. That was 30 positions that have been eliminated or reduced. And that doesn't include FY26. So I just want to be clear that we keep hearing about the enrollment dropping. Absolutely. 250 students don't come here. They go somewhere else. We open a lot of school choice seats. That's how we get our money. 80% of school choice is operational budget. If we didn't have that, I don't know what we would do. But I just want to be clear that I truly appreciate having the money over net school spending. But in all, Belchertown is 282.
Can I kind of, not to, this isn't a this for that type of thing at all. And I mentioned net school spending because I don't want the audience to feel that the town is shortchanging the schools, even though it feels like we're shortchanging. And in order to make this work, the town government departments have to also run, and there's a cost to that. This building collects taxes, accounts for all the money, so on and so forth. Fire EMS serves us all, including the students and their families. We're all here to serve our community, and we're all needed. Most of our departments are mandated. I I just have a hard time accepting the insinuation that the town is hogging more money than they should, or using more money than they should, the town government departments. Unfortunately, we are in a position where costs are going up so much faster than it, and it's just like at home.
Not about the schools versus the police versus
Right,
the fire.
right.
I think the only point I want people to understand from my perspective is the schools have been cutting like 10 or 70%, so it's going to hit us harder. So when people say, well, you have less students, yeah, that's great. We have 30 less staff too. And when, I believe as people are, we don't have the fluff, the muscle. You're going to start going into the muscle. And then if we do that, we're going to lose more educators, more students. And it's not anybody's fault at this table. It is, what is the plan to keep our schools, fire, police, to a point that we can say we're doing the best we can do? So I don't think the town is getting more money. I've said it a long time. It's a revenue problem. I got $600,000 extra. That's great. Health insurance and COLAs for people that every town employee gets, that doesn't even cover that. You know, and that's no one's fault here.
Yeah,
But
understood.
what are we saying? You know, we got to cut you to give the school a raise.
You know where I get confused though? So if looking back at the stats on DESE, back in 2006, 2007, the teacher to student ratio was 15.4. It was 174.5 teachers. And in 2025, there was 169 teachers. And it was like a 12 point. So in 2006, 2007, it was a 15.4 to 1 student to teacher ratio. And in 2025, it was a 12.73 student to teacher ratio. There was 174 teachers back in 2006, 2007, and there was 169 in this past year. So I don't understand where the 30 positions have been lost. Okay, because that would, right, okay, that would make sense.
Pseudo administrative positions, we lost administrative positions, we lost custodians, we lost cafeteria, we lost parents, we lost everything.
12.73 to 1 student teacher ratio, with hundreds less than we had in 2006, 2007.
I didn't realize we were passing out information tonight. I would have, had something to pass out, but I will go back and check.
So it's on the DESE website.
I'm not sure.
It's on the
All I
DESE
have
website.
is the DESE website. And I think it's important that you understand that this isn't anybody's fault, but you're losing educators and students to different school districts.
And as much as I empathize with that as a town resident, as someone who had a child who went through the school systems and all of that, the basic bottom line is we have X amount of dollars and the town needs to function with essential services and certain services that we must provide, and the school must function with essential services, what they must provide. And it's not us, it's not them. I've said that for years. Like I've always said that. It's not us, it's not you and them and us. It's just we're one town that we just, like many other towns across the Commonwealth, across the country, especially smaller rural towns like us who might not get so much money from the state as other big cities or towns get, we just have to deal with the reality of what it is. And the reality of what it is what we have on these papers for funding. Like we can't make money up out of the sky.
And I just want to share, I was on the webinar with superintendents from the area. Nobody was hit like this. Nobody. They were shocked when I told them.
So nobody was hit like what? I don't.
$2.4 million.
Well, so we're not cutting though. So that's where, I understand that the 2 point is what you're looking to have, but we're not, as a whole town together, we're not cutting anything. We're saying, here's what you had last year. And with the new revenue, we're going to give you 70% of that, which is going to give you X amount of dollars to increase your budget. And the town has to deal with the same. And the town has to imagine its budgets, go through it, maybe, I don't know what Steve has to do, but it's a lot to make sure that his budget works. And the school has to as well. It's not that the money was ever there to begin with and somebody's taking it away. It's never was there.
That's the whole problem.
That is the whole problem. The money's, I agree.
But there's no, I mean, I think we've said it so many times, we can't say it any other way. Like, there's no plan. What's the solution? How are we going to sustain it?
Excuse me. We are not taking public comment. Thank you.
So I will say, like, the schools have been making these cuts every year, trying to streamline things. And we're at the point, like, we can't get rid of second grade. That's not a choice.
I get it.
And so there's nothing left that we can get rid of, other than the things that make Belchertown great.
I would put back just a little bit, Heidi, in that the schools have gotten more money every single year for the past decade. Excuse me, yeah, sorry about that. I was going to say I push back just a little bit in that the school department has gotten more money, just like the town departments. Everybody's gotten more money every single year for the past decade. It's never enough. I get that. But the cuts, there's been more money every year.
There's been more money, but it's not level service. It's been less than level service every year.
But you can't keep doing, I mean, we all know this, salaries go up, our main expense is personnel. So just because we got more money doesn't mean we got enough to even maintain what we're doing. And so it's semantics. It's not a cut, we gave you less, right? But it's a cut. If you can't sustain what you already have, it's a cut.
Costs are definitely out of control everywhere you look.
I mean, excuse me, not seeing big small stuff, health insurance. I mean, we can't say we can't be, we can't say, well, we can't do that.
Yeah, we're taking a big hit on health insurance. HMOs are 18%, PPOs are 22% this year.
And the town's taking the same hit as the schools because we're all one community, right? So
We totally get that.
I get it.
Yeah, it's every.
I don't know what the solution is, right?
I
There's
don't
nothing that's going to keep this conversation from happening next year.
Is some of this from Chapter 70 funding in that formula? Is that like state representatives need to fix some of that? Is that kind of some of the issue though?
Sure, that would be great, but, a lot of school districts are held part of this because their enrollment dropped, but they still get the same amount of money. Excuse me, so if Belchertown redid the formula and we had less students, we may get less money. So we gotta be careful what we ask for. But once again, I don't think we're saying this is the town's fault.
No, I get
We're
it.
just saying, what are we doing to maintain, even if we could just maintain our services year after year. That's right, we've gotten above, 100,000, 300,000 over the previous year. But transportation costs go up, oil goes up, electricity goes up. Whether you're the school, the police, the fire, they go up. And it's, to me, we can't even maintain those costs going up.
I don't disagree with anything you say, Brian. You know that. I think it
goes back to the question, what's the plan?
What is the plan? And it's operational expenses. So, you have to be able to generate enough revenue to cover operational expenses. They're not one time, they're not capital, they're not whatever. These are ongoing one-time operational expenses that we need to be able to cover from the revenues that come into the town every year.
I heard a 2.5 override. Is that an option?
I would not support that.
I guess my question is it an option?
Excuse me, we are not taking public comment. If you'd like to email questions, if you have any questions that you'd like to email to any of us, we are all on the town website, our email contact information. So feel free to email us anything you'd like for questions.
I will just say, because this comes up at the school committee sometimes, you all have the right to view this public meeting. You don't
Right.
necessarily have the right to be part of it.
Correct. Thank you, Heidi. So I'm sorry, Brian, what were you saying?
I was just wondering if it's an option. And
I personally would not support it, and I will tell you why. It is because it would be for operational expenses, and so it would not solve the problem on the long term. It would burden the taxpayers of this town with the Proposition 2.5 override for day-to-day expenses. And then what happens next year when the same losses are there? And so that's where I would be hard pressed. If it was something for, I don't know, but operational expenses, we really need to be able to work within the revenue in which we get and generate and all of that to do. That would be my fiscal opinion.
So can I say, when we were talking about the new building, one of the things Steve said, and I understood it, he didn't support it because he thought we might need a 2.5 override for operational in the near future. Remember that?
Yeah, I said something to that effect because I am concerned that we can't support our own operational budgets at this time, and the taxpayers are going to be stressed.
So does that mean a 2.5 override is possible?
It's not my decision. It's a decision for the select board, FinCom, and the taxpayers.
And it's hard because I'm asking parents to help with operational costs when they increase bus fees, athletic fees, we're charging for cap and gowns. You know, so I get it. And I don't know enough about it.
Since you said that, I mean, I'd love to hear from the select board and what your thoughts are on the budget situation, this cuts to the schools, a 2.5 override.
The 2.5, I totally agree with Lauren. If the 2.5 override solved the problem, then I'd be interested in hearing more about it. But it would not solve the problem. We would be right back where we are now, 12 months from now.
And on top of that, as everyone knows, the buildings in town, everywhere we look, you know, that'll be an override question of itself, right?
Absolutely.
So the way I look at it, we have to look at it all together, whether it's buildings, operations, all of it. And that's a very large question in terms of like, what is it going to reach into? Don't forget, like the Belchertown residents have been paying a maximum 2.5% increase every year. I look at my own property taxes. I'm like, what the heck? Right? So you look at this stuff and you ask yourself, how much more can the residents take? Right? That's part of our chief responsibility. I mean, the school question came up, and that was voted down by a lot. So you know, the temperature one would have to deduce, like, you know, there's we got to be smart about how we approach this stuff this year, next year, the next 10 years, right? So going to the public for a 2.5 override now on a one-off, that doesn't make much sense to me.
Operational. It would be strictly operational, which is not sustainable.
Yes, and I respect that. But what we're doing is sustainable. And I only bring it up because it was brought up by 2 residents.
Oh, I understand.
And I wonder if there's more residents.
I'm
sure there's plenty of residents that don't like it, you know? And I'm the first to admit, I don't live in Belchertown, so I'm not telling residents of Belchertown what to do.
I mean, the best case scenario is that we are allotted more support from the state. Historically, Belchertown has been given negligible amounts of money from the state as increases as low as 1%. What was the percentage last year, Jill? Like point nothing?
Yeah.
Like, so to lobby our legislators and to, you know, let them know just what we're trying to deal with, because we really do need more support from state funding in order to overcome this problem. But it's nothing that we can do from our taxation base. You know, we do everything that we can. We try to get businesses in, we try to do whatever we can, but we still are where we are.
So, just a follow-up, and then I'll be quiet. So, are we just going to wait for the state to change the formula? Because I think people need to know that. Because if educators have an opportunity to go somewhere else, I would encourage them to go.
My suggestion would be that everyone take the available opportunity to lobby their legislators to relook at the formulas and what Belchertown is given, because I think the more voices that are, you know, legislators' ears, the more it'll be prominent on their plate to potentially look at and review. I don't know if it would do anything for this year, but that is just what I would think would be helpful because, again, there's the pile to the left that nobody looks at if nobody's calling, yet the one that keeps on calling and talking gets to the pile in the front of the person.
This isn't new.
But this is
People have been talking about reaching out to your legislations for 5 years.
And so have they? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but we do have the amount of money that we have right now, and that's the reality of it. I don't think that the town could shave anything further with, and even if they did shave anything further, it wouldn't even come close to meeting what you say you would need. Like if they shuttered buildings and shuttered services, it would still not bring you to where you say you need to be to provide the services you want.
It's a revenue problem.
100%.
And we don't have a plan. So I don't know how to tell people when they ask me, like, who calls town schools?
100% a revenue problem. Does anybody on the finance committee have anything to add to this conversation?
I mean, it's a revenue problem. So that needs to be the forefront of all discussions, I think, is how can we generate more revenue? And it's not just to benefit the schools, it's for the town in general, town government, buildings, everything.
Yeah, and there are initiatives that we've started, but they're years away before we really start to see those results. Most recently, the governor is proposing an increase in meals taxes from 0.75 to a 1% on your meals in Belchertown. But we don't have enough restaurants to really make that a windfall. We've been working with the Chamber of Commerce from Amherst and Ware and the Quabog to try to get more excitement about relocating businesses in Belchertown because they bring tax money in and there's no golden ticket that's going to help us this year. That's the bottom line. But I know Select Board Member Turner has been working diligently to try to generate business activity down around the old state school, which you're more than welcome to talk about. But.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that I mentioned last time. One is the water legislation for the Quabbin that is currently in. Everyone can reach out to your legislators right now to lobby for that to pass. That will put money into our coffers. Again, not going to fix this year. And the initiatives that I know may seem like they're not connected to anything else, like the rebranding, having a communications manager, having a grants manager. Those are the things that are going to help market our community to help drive our business tax base, in addition to the resident tax base. These things, we've been working on them for a couple of years. We're at the point where we're going to start seeing some traction. We have been doing more networking, so we do have a plan. It's just not going to be a quick fix. I know you're shaking your head, but these things take time, and they were not able, the foundation needed to be built, and now we're working on moving those pieces forward, and we're connecting with, like Steve mentioned, the chambers on different initiatives that will help attract businesses. I'll tell you, we have a sushi restaurant and a Mexican restaurant opening up here, and I can tell you that is, definitely part of the reason is because we are trying to make sure that people are aware that businesses are open. We're open for business here in Belchertown. So it's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole entire enchilada, but it's these things that will help move the town forward and help to build our revenue base.
I agree.
So I just want to say, as we're talking about, there's not like a solution and we don't really have a thing. The more we cut from the schools, if we have to cut arts, if we have to cut sports, if we have to cut all these things that make us great, that's going to make more people leave the town. They're going to go to school choice and they're going to go to the charter schools. And Jill talked about that money coming off the cherry shoot off the top. And so that's just going to make the problem worse.
Excuse me, we are not allowing for public participation. So we can ask you to leave or we can adjourn the meeting until you're done speaking because we're not taking public comment. Thank you. So Heidi and Brian, I'd like to ask you this question. The school choice funds, I think that's about 500,000 a year that you get. Is that factored into your budget?
80% of that money is operational.
And how does that get, I'm just asking, I don't know. How does that get allocated? Like to
Oil,
what?
Electricity, some positions.
I know our school resource.
300,000 tuitions.
300,000 in what?
Tuitions. About 400,000 in maintenance.
Isn't it like usually about 500,000 a year that generates?
No, it's
It's a
more
million.
like 800 to a million, depending on the year.
800 to a million. And so that 800 to a million is already in your operating budget?
Yeah.
Is there any way to increase? Is there?
Well, and I mean, that's like like with these cuts.
I was just gonna say, is there any
my
way to
fear
increase?
is we're gonna lose more students. We're not gonna gain the school choice students, and that's gonna be a net negative to the budget as it is. So next year, that's gonna be a problem.
But next year, if students decide, like, well, Belchertown doesn't have it, I'm gonna go to a charter school, or I'm gonna go to a tech school, or I'm gonna go to Granby, that's money that's gonna come right off the
It's a-
cherry sheet and gonna hurt everybody.
It's
That's
a
not just
spiral.
gonna hurt the schools.
It's a downward spiral. I don't know how we'll recover from.
But I think it's important that we're gonna lose 20-something positions on top of the 30 we've already lost
You lost 30 positions?
since I became superintendent. So add another 20-something for this year. I don't know what we're branding about the schools.
I'm sorry.
I don't mean that facetiously or rudely, but if we want people to come to Belchertown, we hear all the time, we're coming for the schools. Once again, it's no one's fault, but we don't have a plan.
Any of the finance committee have questions for this, anyone on that panel?
Anything to add from the select board?
No.
So as a subset of the Steve's report, we had the Belchertown Public Schools giving us their budget update. Did you guys want to talk about that? Or have we all just kind of spoken about it? Oh, I put it on the agenda, that, like, just to give you an opportunity to speak if you want. It's fine. Like, I just wanted to make sure that you had an equal opportunity to speak.
Yeah, you let me speak.
And so if you have anything else to add, does anybody have anything else to add?
When is your public hearing for your budget?
In April.
April?
And by then, honestly, it's too late. I can't.
So, I'm sorry, Brian. You know I'm sorry. You know.
So what is the next step? Are we leaving this meeting saying this is our number?
I think at this time, that is the number. Like, at this time, there's nothing that anyone can do other than to say that with the information that we have right now, from everything we have to pull from, whether it be what our taxes, our new growth, the state's going to offer us, the governor's budget, and whatever, this is your new number. Like, that's the reality of it.
So then we heard Pathfinder, and it was a minimal increase, but that's gonna change our number.
It'll change the number a little bit, but that'll also be split to 70-30 though, because Pathfinder
Right.
comes off the top. So it wouldn't be the entire 26,000. And quite frankly, I am thrilled that it's that's like almost net. That's a great job.
Everybody speaking to them last year.
They did. They definitely came to the table with I'm thrilled with that number. So a little bit more, and again, things will change until the numbers actually finalize. When do you think that would be, Jill? Like
The
generally?
state number?
Yeah, the state
No.
number.
With state number.
July, August.
Yeah. However, the numbers that you see on the income and expense will be reviewed as far as revenues. It's not going to be $1 million. But
That 2.1 million, I gotta cover unemployment. So it's more than $2.1 million.
I think even last year we ended up having, hopefully we'll have it like last year where some additional funding came in. There was not a lot, but it was a nice little, bonus that we ended up getting. But we don't have that number until later on down the road.
Jill made me very happy the other day.
Didn't she? Oh my God, that Jill when she helped me.
The only time anybody,
Yeah.
especially Brian.
That's right. Ed?
No, I think good discussion. It's good to hear from everyone in the audience. We're all part of the same community. We all live here. It's not easy. It's not easy to be here and listen, but that's what you elected most of us up here to do. So I just want to thank everyone, and the budget season's not finished yet, but this is kind of where we're starting from tonight. Anything else to add, folks? Nope.
And again, I do want to thank everyone in the audience for coming and learning. And it is very hard for all of us, elected or appointed or employed by the town. It's a very hard process for all of us. We want what's best for everyone in the town. We are charged with looking at the long-term big picture and doing across the board what we can do for everybody as equitably as possible. And that's a very hard decision sometimes. But we do our best across the board. And I thank the finance committee, the select board, and the school committee, and our leadership in the schools and in the town for taking time to come and give us all this information. And I do think these are pretty close to the numbers that we're going to have this year.